Esperanza Spalding. Next on Black Nouveau. Hi, I'm Milton, Dockery.
And I'm Faithe. Welcome to Black Nouveau. In addition to the jazz sounds of Esperanza Spalding, we'll talk with financial coach Glinda Bridgforth and Reggie Bicha, Secretary for Children and Families, about child welfare.
But first, we began with the profile of native Milwaukeean Reggie Wilson, who now heads the internationally known Fist and Hill performance group. Margot Spann has that story.
In the work that I do, I often try and find ways of reclaiming African and African American history that has kind of had a negative light turned on it, and use that as a place of empowerment or strength.
Milwaukee native Reggie Wilson is the founder and artistic director of Fist and Heel Performance Group. The New York-based ensemble takes dance to the next level, blending African movement with Caribbean, modern, and African American dance. Wilson and his group are in Sheboygan collaborating with community groups and conducting workshops on African dance.
I knew that there weren't a lot of dance presenting organizations in Milwaukee or the Wisconsin area. And being from Milwaukee, I wanted to be able to bring my dance back home.
What do you think it is about your particular dance group that makes you unique?
The entire spectrum of the company is the spectrum of the African diaspora. We have African Americans, we have 3 Caribbean folk, 2 Trinidadians, 1 Jamaican. We have another African vocalist in the group. He's from Sierra Leone. He's a physical therapist as well. So it's a mix-up, and to me, I think that's really important for people to see a spectrum of what humanity looks like, as well as what the African diaspora looks like.
How would you say your Milwaukee upbringing has influenced your production group? I mean, you mentioned that you guys are basically from all over and all different backgrounds. What would you say that you bring to the group, especially as a Milwaukeean?
Frozen custard. No. I love frozen custard, and we haven't had an opportunity to get it here. There are weird little things that are peculiar to this region and Milwaukee, and also going to Chicago, and the history of my family, which I think is true for a lot of black folks in this area. Our families came up from the South, from the Delta, and what those cultures were and how they kind of shifted when they got up north.
Wilson says his education at Rufus King High School also prepared him for working with people of different cultures.
All of our parents knew the other parents, and you know, they're Mexican, Korean, white, black, Jewish, rich, poor, you know, east side, west side, north side, northwest side. So that kind of model of we can get along, I think is something also that I got from my particular upbringing in Milwaukee. The main thread of the piece, I think in my head, was when I first encountered stepping. And not the fraternity stepping, but the hand dancing, partnering stepping. And that happened by me going back to Milwaukee. I live in New York, was visiting family over the holidays and wanted to go out one night, called a cousin of mine up and he said, okay, yeah, I know a club we can go to. We went into the nightclub and there were people there, not just one generation, but older people, younger people. Music felt a little slower than the R&B I was used to and had a kind of a really specific rhythm. And people were actually dancing with their hands, which kind of having spent a lot of time on the East Coast, that was either supposed to be disco dancing or Latin dancing or maybe ballroom dancing. But in the African American context, I didn't have a present day space in my brain for what that was supposed to be. So I kind of freaked out. I was like, and they're all doing it, and it was so smooth, and it was so cool, and it was so connected to a sense of who I am or was as an African American. I'd been traveling a lot in the Caribbean, I'd been traveling a lot in Africa, going to a lot of nightclubs there, and there people do hand dancing kind of stuff, but there's something about the vibe, the energy felt like that. So it was very connected to the African diaspora, but it felt very much produced. It was indigenous. It wasn't something that had been adopted into it. I could feel that it came from us. I don't like to consider myself an authority on anybody or anybody's culture, including my own. So the research that I do, I always see myself as an artist, and that the lens that the images that I'm presenting to the audience is through the lens of my eyes. And I want them to be conscious of that and conscious of the fact that they are also seeing this information through their life experiences. So the research, to me, it comes into the work in a lot of different ways. It might be actually the way that it exists in the culture where it's from, or it might just be one element of that thing, of a particular dance. Humans have been moving for millennia, and how we come together is something that's really fascinating to me. So to me, if to spread that kind of gospel of, take the importance off your shoulders. This is not something new. It can be done. People that are different can get together and coexist. I think that that's a really important kind of message and experience that people can have as well as witness and say, okay, there's a possibility. Just to have that image in your brain somewhere, it's like, okay, it's a possibility.
You may remember that we recently talked to Reggie Bicha, State Secretary for Children and Families, about the Wisconsin Shares Program. During his visit, we also had an opportunity to talk with the Secretary about some of his other priorities. Mr. Secretary, what are some of your priorities in the area of child welfare?
Well, as you might know, the Bureau of Milwaukee Child Welfare was created about 11 years ago. It was in the result of a federal lawsuit that was filed by the ACLU against Milwaukee County in the state of Wisconsin for very egregious practices of child welfare in this county.
For example?
At the time, we had about 6,800 children living in foster care. There were so many kids in foster care, and the county wasn't hiring enough staff to care for the kids, that it was happening so frequently that caseloads were over 100 children per caseworker. There were some children that didn't even have case managers assigned, and that happened so frequently they had a special name called vacant zones. That child was on a vacant zone, meaning they didn't even have a case manager assigned. That does not happen today. We've reduced the number of children in out-of-home care from 6,800 to about 2,300 today. Every child in the Bureau of Milwaukee Child Welfare has a case manager assigned, and all of them have cases that are no higher than 12 families per worker. We've made significant progress in the last couple of years to make sure that children are safe and achieving permanency, but we have even more work to do.
Could you be more specific on the safety aspect? For example, if someone wanted to be a foster parent, do they undergo a background check? If so, how often?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we need more foster parents in Milwaukee County. As I mentioned, we have about 2,300 children living in out-of-home care today, but only about 700 licensed foster homes. We need more individuals in the community to open up their hearts and homes and be willing to serve as foster parents, whether it's one child for one night or for some period of time, or people who are willing to do it over their lifespan. Doesn't matter if you're single or married, doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or young or old. If you're interested in opening up your heart and home to serve a child or a sibling group, we're very interested.
Are the other areas that you're dealing with in terms of child welfare?
Absolutely. You know, we have new leadership in the Bureau of Milwaukee Child Welfare that I think is important to note. Arlene Haypak joined as the Bureau Director. She comes to us from the state of Illinois, and she has a great fresh perspective and wants to work very closely with the community to make sure that the Bureau of Milwaukee Child Welfare is successful at making sure that children are safe and reaching permanency.
Now, some of the changes that have been made centered around the daycare issue would they be applied as well to child welfare overall?
Absolutely. We're raising the standards in child welfare and also providing new resources for children served in the child welfare system. Very shortly we'll be issuing a proposal to bring nurses to the case management delivery model that we provide for children who are 3 or younger or are medically fragile, to make sure that those children not only are being seen by a case manager every month to make sure that they're safe and healthy, but also they will be seen by a nurse every month to make sure that they're...
Would that nurse be coming in home, or would they have to go to a specific location?
Those nurses will be coming in home and will be augmenting the work that children normally get, health care that they normally receive from their primary care physician.
Would they be announced or unannounced visits?
A mix of both. Certainly we want to work in coordination with foster parents and relative caregivers to meet the needs of children. So we want to coordinate with those foster parents and making sure that we're providing a holistic level of care of both the social and health needs of children, especially our youngest children who are served by the child welfare system.
So Mr. Secretary, I guess it's safe to say the fraud issue centered around daycare has brought about more changes, not only for the daycare issue, but for children overall. Why a fraud issue to make these changes? Why not have the vision before the fraud issues to do what you're doing now?
You know, the Department of Children and Families was created by Governor Doyle in July of 2008. We're only in our 15th or 16th month of operation. And it was that vision to do even more for children and families in our state and to restructure, retool, and reprioritize our efforts to meet the needs and help children and families to be successful in our state that led to Governor Doyle's decision to create a Department of Children and Families. The Department of Children and Families did not create the problems in the Wisconsin Shares program. We did not create the challenges in the child welfare system in Milwaukee and in the state of Wisconsin. The Department of Children and Families was created by Governor Doyle to fix the problems of fraud in Wisconsin Shares and to strengthen our child welfare system across the state. And that's what we're doing.
Mr. Secretary, you have a background in social work. Matter of fact, you were a social worker at one point in time. How has your background helped you in your position as Secretary?
I am a social worker by training. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in social work. I studied child welfare in college, was a child welfare scholar in graduate school. My wife and I were foster parents for a number of years. I did direct practice and worked as a supervisor and a human services director before joining the Doyle administration. And it's interesting, serving as secretary today, I still see myself very much as that young social worker who was doing direct practice, knowing that every day I went to work, I could possibly make a difference for a child. And that inspiration, that energy continues to drive me today as Secretary of the Department of Children and Families.
Secretary Bicha, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on Black Nouveau.
My privilege, thank you.
Esperanza Spalding started playing musical instruments at an early age and mastered the violin, oboe, and clarinet before settling on the bass. Bobby Drake has more.
Quando vim para esse mundo, eu não atinava.
We gathered at the Kohler Arts Center in Sheboygan, Wisconsin to watch Esperanza Spalding, a double bass prodigy born and raised in Portland, Oregon, who entered the world of the working musician armed with only a single bass line at the age of 15. Having covered a myriad of experiences since then, we sat down with her to discuss her roles as a teacher, her mentors, her most important lesson, and her humble beginnings as a child that was homeschooled. When did you pick up the bass? What was that like? I mean, you went from homeschooling to picking up the bass?
Well, I've been playing violin for about 10 years, and somehow I got a scholarship to this art school. I was 13 when I started. It was a high school. So I was too young, and the environment was just not what I was prepared for. You know, if you've been homeschooled and you go into a high school setting, even though it was a small arts high school, it wasn't really my cup of tea.
In the process of all this, she almost quit, and then the school acquired a bass.
Somehow before I quit, they got a bass for some reason. I'm still not exactly sure. They just said they could supplement their music program that was next to non-existent with a bass. And I went in one day when I was skipping class, which I don't condone.
That's right.
Yeah, go to class. And I started playing it, and I loved it, and then I never really quit.
So what led you across the states then? How did you go from, the Portland music scene all the way over to Boston?
Well, I got a scholarship to Berkeley. I would have never done anything. I don't know what I would have done, man. That like saved me. Saved my life.
This saving of her life came with her auditioning for the Berkeley Scholarship, and as they say, the rest is history. Now, while you were out at Berkeley, was there anybody there that was like a mentor to you? Anybody that kept you, encouraged you, and helped you along? Or did you just like get to campus and you were the superstar because you were just
hilarious.
Playing so long?
No, definitely not option B. I really am not a good student, and I have to admit that. Like I don't do well in academic settings as a student. I like to teach, but I don't like to be a student. So all my teachers kind of make fun of me, like I was never in class and I would never do what they told me to do. But I did. I just kind of was too stubborn to admit that they were helping me progress.
It was kind of on your own terms.
Yeah, but I really did have like John Lockwood and Ron Makdi and Bruce Gertz. Those were three of my bass teachers, and they were really amazing. And Hal Crook. There were a few teachers that just by their musicianship on their own, just being present and how they think about music and how they play and approach it was really beneficial, even though I wasn't really in the academic world. But then getting gigs like to play with Patty, and also I got to play with Joe Lovano later on in my years there, and those, they open your eyes because you're working with professionals, seeing how everything that you're trying to learn in school, they're trying to get you to learn, applies right there in the real context. So that was definitely helpful.
Esperanza Spalding's biggest personal lesson comes from music in general, especially from a position like the bass, and that is, you really have to be accommodating.
You have to, all your ego and all your I know what to do has to just totally go away. And at the same time, you have to have the self-awareness to be consistent and stable and steady. So it's like fearlessness coupled with kind of passiveness, and it's like a very responsive instrument. So you're responsible for keeping on the rhythm, and you have a very predominant role. Everybody hears the bass. If you miss a note on the downbeat or whatever, everybody hears it. Yet your role harmonically and rhythmically, like you have to be very adaptable. So piano player might play a phrase or imply a phrase or start to do this reharmonization, and at the drop of a hat, it doesn't matter what you were planning on doing. That's what you have to do.
Esperanza Spalding, whether performing or touring, can be reached at her website, esperanzaspalding.com.
But
definitely go to esperanzaspalding.com.
That's it, esperanzaspalding.com.
Financial coach Glinda Bridgforth works with individuals who have cash flow and debt management issues. Liddy Collins has that story.
No more worries. No more worries, exactly. It doesn't matter how much income you make, it's really about how you spend it and what you have left. It's really not about your level of education, or it's not about how old you are. It's not about your level of intelligence. There are a lot of factors that really play a part in terms of why we're in the financial situation that we're in, or what's preventing us from getting to where we'd like to be.
Meet Glinda Bridgforth, financial expert and author of Girl, Get Your Money Straight, Girl, Make Your Money Grow, and Girl, Get Your Credit Straight. She spoke at a luncheon for Upsilon Mu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where she shared her holistic approach to handling money.
You've got to go beyond just looking at money from a practical sense, income versus expenses, but you also have to look at it from a broader area, to look at it from the emotional side, the spiritual side, psychological side, in terms of how we handle money.
Self-esteem, deprivation, and fear are emotional barriers to financial freedom, barriers women really need to break through.
Because we live longer than men, it's important because there's a high ratio of divorces that happen in this country, and also the percentage of women who are unmarried, who remain unmarried, that we need to know how to handle ourselves and be financially responsible. We put ourselves in a position where we take care of other people, where we don't put ourselves in the first place of importance, whether it be your children, your parents, your siblings, and so forth. Somebody comes to you, they need money. You know, we have a real difficult time saying no. And so not taking care of ourselves, I think, is a real big area that women need more support and more encouragement in doing. I think in addition to that, we also overspend. We don't always know the difference between our wants and our needs. And once we're able to do that, then I think that we can position ourselves so that we do the things that we need to do as far as addressing our needs, looking towards long-term retirement, and being in a position to take care of ourselves through those years.
Bridgforth herself is a testament for her book, Get Your Money Straight.
During the daytime, I was this successful manager and, you know, hitting my goals and being, you know, acknowledged for different things and so forth, making more money than I'd ever made before in my life. But by night, I was a person who went home and lived a life of fear and anxiety and worry and stress. And the reason for that was because I was overextended in terms of debt. So it was really a very difficult and painful period to go through. At its worst, I was at a position where I had income property in foreclosure. The house I was living in was going into foreclosure. I was on disability. I was going through a divorce, and I had $50,000 worth of unsecured debt, and wondering how in the world could I have let this happen to myself. So I had to move my ego out of the way because I was making more money than I'd ever made before in my life, but we were still broke. We were just broke at a higher status level.
She ended up divorcing, and instead of filing bankruptcy, she paid off her debt. She said she paid it off the old-fashioned way, $20 at a time.
We need to start with the basics, start with where we're at, know where our money is going, and start to prepare. We need to be planners. We need to make sure that we prepare for our finances. We need to make sure that we are prudent, because today is a time when, again, we need to pay off our debt as well as begin to save. And I think it's also important for us to be patient with ourselves, because it is a process, and a lot of us have not managed our money well over the years. So you have to be patient with yourself and make sure that you're not so hard just because you slip up, because everybody slips up now and again, but it's important to get back on track after that.
She gave 9 financial tips to help get back on track. Number 1, don't panic. Number 2, chart your debt. Number 3, don't create new debt.
A key to your being financially successful is number 4, create a monthly spending plan. Number 5, track and analyze your spending. Write down every cent you spend. You got to write it down, add it up, analyze it, and then make decisions based on that. You guys know that you need to spend less and save more. You already know you need to make a budget. You need to save money. You need to put money away for retirement. Here's the point that in today's economic environment that I am really pressing people to do, and that would be number 7, increase your income. Create multiple streams of income for yourself, because no job is that secure and no one's business is that secure. If people lose their jobs, they're not going to be able to patronize your business. So you've got to create multiple streams of income. It might be getting a part-time job. As you generate this additional money, my point is, don't think that this is your fun money. This is money that should go towards paying off debt or increasing your savings.
She also gave 5 ways to boost your credit score.
Stop debting, get off that treadmill if you know you're paying off debt and then you go back and you run it up again and you pay it off, so get off of that treadmill. Secondly, fix the errors that you have on your credit report, because if you do that, that's going to be an immediate increase in your credit score, because credit scores today are second only to your Social Security number. That's how important they are. It can determine not only the interest that you get on mortgages and loans, it can determine where you live, because landlords will look for that information. Employment, it can determine that. We have to begin to get our money straight, get our finances in order, because we need to be the role model so that we begin to teach our children early on how to be responsible with money.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau.
Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.
Good night.